Good evening and welcome to another Women Talking Wellness. We've had a wee break for a few weeks and I'm really hoping that you missed us, but I'm going to make up for it today. Today we're back in glorious Technicolor to share another hour of really great chat with an awesome woman doing and sharing incredible things around the world. Now, I want to ask you a question before we start today, and you can shout out in the comments if this sounds anything like you. Do you know in your heart it's time to slow down, step back from the chaos, and maybe tune into your own energetic cycles? Are you thinking, yeah, I hear you, Lorna, but how the heck do I do that in this crazy ass world? Well, I think you're going to find that we've got you covered tonight. Now, if you're catching up with this on the replay, don't forget to say hey in the comments and let's know what nuggets and takeaways you get from tonight's little chit chat. We really do love to know who's tuning in. This evening, we're heading to the old US of A, where my guest is coming to us live from her home in Colorado. She's a woman who's been on quite a life journey herself, and she knows what it feels like to flip flop from being an overachiever to a lost lamb, wondering what the heck all this life stuff is about. She's a shamanic healer, a soul led business mentor, and she's also the founder of Fully Shining Women Leading Our World movement. I am just so darned excited to welcome her live to Women Talking Wellness. It is Meghan Gilroy. Welcome to Women Talking Wellness, Meghan.
Hi, Lorna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, I'm thrilled to have you. And I just want to say a little hi to our lovely Rachel, who I think has not missed a Women Talking Wellness. And we've got Sally with us tonight as well. So, hey, ladies, welcome. I hope
That's
you're
awesome.
tucked under blankets with your cups of tea. I've got mine ready to go. Uh, so, a warm welcome to Megan. And I guess maybe we'll begin with because I think a few of you are probably thinking to yourself, what's a shamanic healer? And what's a soul-led businesswoman? Now, if you're pondering that question, I think Megan is gonna have some good answers for you tonight. So I'm gonna hand you over to her.
Thank you. Yeah, and how do you put those two things together?
Mm-hmm.
So I had the pleasure of studying with Don Miguel Ruiz, who wrote the Four Agreements. He was my mentor for over a decade, and he came into my life when I was just experiencing heartbreak and betrayal and an out of control classroom. And I was so used to being that like overachiever, people pleaser, perfectionist. I had all my goals lined up, like I knew what I was doing in my life. And then my world kind of exploded because he is a shaman and I spent much time with him in the pyramids of Mexico.
Mm,
And so for me, a shaman is someone who is able to go into that spirit world and get information and guidance and bring it back into the everyday world. And
mm,
obviously, there are traditions and lineages of being a shaman. And so, if you're going to go out and kind of broadcast that that's who you are, you want to have studied with a shaman and been named a shaman, as he did for me. But I also believe that each one of us have that innate ability to go inside and listen to our own inner guidance and our own inner knowledge and bring that into our daily lives. And so that's
mm,
why I really love calling myself a soul led business mentor because I've run multiple seven-figure businesses. And what I found is when your business isn't really in tune with your soul and what your purpose is here on the planet, that you tend to feel like you're on that gerbil wheel and that it's not really satisfying and you don't really get that momentum. And so, what I really love doing is working with women entrepreneurs who want to really be able to trust and listen and be in tune with that soul purpose and that inner guidance, and they
mm,
want to find those ways to nurture themselves so their life and business really blends together in a beautiful way, and they want to create a business that's really unique to their soul the way they are, because it doesn't really
mm.
work for those of us who have this kind of heart following to do that cookie cutter approach. And so
Yeah.
I do that because I believe in women. I believe we have so much innate ability to attune to cosmic cycles, natural world cycles, our own
Mm.
cycles. We also tend to really think both of ourselves and about the community, and I just see that when our wisdom comes through and we're fully shining, that we not only inspire other people but we make that big impact on the world.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I've just had a comment drop from our lovely friend Sally, and she said, I'm really excited about this as I feel the calling for this, but I'm so scared. So I think tonight is
Hmm.
going to be super, super useful for her.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's so brave to acknowledge that because when we change, it's scary, right? It's unknown. Like when there's something in our hearts that we want so strongly and our
yeah,
soul is calling for it, but it means we have to let go of what's comfortable or what's known or the ways we've been coping. That is
mm,
scary. And it's an exciting path, but it's also a path that takes like so much courage.
yeah, yeah, it does. We when we were chatting about our plan for this evening,
Uh-huh.
well, I say we came up with the title. You came up with this fabulous title, "Sinking Your Soul," and I love that idea to your life and to your business. So,
Yeah.
this is not just about people who are entrepreneurs, people who want to dive into
Right.
business. This is stuff that's for life.
Yeah.
Not just about if you want to, find your sort of business idea. But sinking your soul, I think is a really powerful thing. And again, I wonder if we could just dive into that a little bit more because it's one of those terms that I think for some people it can feel a little bit fluffy, a little
Uh-huh.
bit like, you want me to do what?
Right. How do I do that? What the heck does that even mean?
Right?
Yeah.
So maybe if we can put that into some
Yeah,
terms that
some
perhaps
practical
are
concept. Yeah,
yeah.
so I feel like there's like two components to this. One is I believe that each one of us are here on this planet for a purpose and that we're kind of uniquely configured with gifts and talents and abilities that can be of service to others. And whether you
Mm,
do that in a business or it's just when you're at the grocery store and how you interact with a cashier or with your children or your partner or your family,
mm,
that that comes through. So for me, I would say on one level, I'm a light bearer and a light amplifier and a truth teller. And I feel like I'm here to really be a catalyst and a communicator and a channel. And I really am good at connecting people. And so those things are things that I'm doing all the time, both energetically and in how I'm interacting with people. And then I've
mm,
taken those and put that into my business. So I think there's that level of just really feeling in tune with a deeper meaning and a deeper purpose. And then I think there's also that component of feeling synced up with your soul, meaning like what is your heart asking for? What is true
mm,
for you? And so for me, I found that the more I've been able to go into a place of stillness and listen to what are those nudges I'm getting? What are the little intuitive signals I'm getting about conversation I have or who I should pick up the phone for or something like, oh, you really need to speak up about that in your relationship or you need to
mm,
draw that boundary. Like those are also those kind of whisperings that sometimes they feel like clobbers over the head and sometimes they're just like quiet knowings of actions we can take and how we can make decisions in our everyday life. And when you're out of step with your soul, like for example, I've had people who say, like, oh, right now I'm just so tired, but I really feel like I'm supposed to be, out there on the streets protesting or rallying or whatever. And
mm,
it's like, okay, well, you need to look at that. Like what is your energy telling you? What is your energy asking for? And is that matching up with the choices you're making, or is your mind getting in the way and saying, well, you should be doing this, or
mm,
your society expects this of you, or your family wants you to do this, or your partner expects you to show up in this way. And I've just found the more that I'm willing to really be ruthlessly honest with myself about
mm,
what it is I want, what feels right to me, what those messages I'm getting, and I'm willing to speak up and share that with the people around me, the more I just feel like my life has a sense of ease and abundance and flow. And when I don't listen to myself, that's usually when the drama starts or the
yes.
miscommunication happens or I just feel stuck or confused. And so I think when we can be really in a line with, okay, here's why I'm here and here's how I
Mm.
can be of service. And then also, what are those kind of like daily messages that feel really right? That's when you start to feel like you're really in sync with yourself.
Yeah, no, agreed. How do we know when we're tuning into our intuition? I think that that's something that many of us, as women, we have an intuition. I firmly believe this.
Yep.
Women are so like we are powerful beyond words, and
It's
we
true.
don't know it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to intuition, I know myself. I whenever I don't follow my gut, in fact, I had a conversation with someone just recently, and it was an interesting conversation because it was with a male friend,
Hmm.
and we were actually talking about relationships and dating, and I had said to him that I said, right now I would just like to meet someone that I want to go on a second date with,
Uh-huh.
and he said, well, that's because you don't give people chance, Lorna. You need to give people more of an opportunity. Like, you don't know if you like someone after one date. And I said, no, I do.
I do. Yeah.
And the times that I have talked myself out of that and gone, oh, I'm being unfair, I need to
Yeah,
give this person an opportunity, are always the times that I have ended up in like the worst situations. Like, I know that my gut is really accurate when I choose to listen to it, but I think many of us are really bad at that.
for sure. Well, I want to validate you because my husband and I got married 2 weeks after our first date. So,
I
right? It can
know,
totally
you
happen, you know.
crazy thing. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So here's the thing I have to say is that, I think in our society in general, we have been taught to value our minds and thinking and rationalizing and logic much more than we're taught to really listen to our hearts. And that starts when we're little, right? We're praised for when we like do what someone outside of ourselves wants us to do, whether it's our parents or our teachers. So it takes a lot of unraveling and shedding to really get back to that place of like, what is it that I want and how do I know that? And so I think for each person, it's different. Like some of us have more of like a heart sense feeling, like you just can feel it and you know it in your body. Some people feel it in their gut, like they just have a gut knowing. Other people have more of like that flash of insight, that vision. They're more of like a seer, a sight person. Some people hear things. Like a lot of times for me, if I tune in, I just like hear a voice that it sounds like my voice, but it doesn't have like any doubt to it. And so to me, no matter what method you're using, it kind of boils down to if if for me, I get that like open, expansive sensation, and it's coming from that place of like kindness and certainty. That tends to be my intuition. And if I have that sense of like constriction or just like flat energy, like it's not something that brings me pleasure or joy, like that to me is my no. And if I'm listening to a voice and I'm like, huh, like who's talking here? Usually the voice that isn't intuition has more of that kind of like negative, doubty, logical reasoning behind it than the ones that, even if it's a no or kind of like this is not the right path to go down, it's like kind of confirmed by the energy isn't behind it.
Mm. How would you suggest that we find a way to tap into the right voices in our head? Because there's
Uh-huh.
there's the wrong voices and there's the right voices,
Sure.
isn't there?
Yeah, for me, what works best is I have to be quiet. I have to go into stillness. So, like, if I'm in the busyness of my day, it's harder for me to really tune into both the voice, the authentic, true voice, and the sensations because my attention is just being preoccupied by whatever I'm doing and the people pulling on me and to do lists and all that. So for me, it really helps. I have a morning practice, which I have to say, I knew I was supposed to be doing that for years, and I would do it off and on, and I would have great excuses why I would or wouldn't do it because we
Mm.
had this chat. I'm not a morning person either. And now, when I even miss a day of just sitting with myself for like 10 minutes before I talk to anyone in the world, I feel so different. It's like if I needed proof, I can now see that. So for me,
Mm.
just having that simple practice of, I light a candle, I have a little altar. It's actually in my like little Harry Potter closet because it's under our stairs and I've just laid it out. So, I have different little objects that remind me of different traditions I'm part of and like representations of the most powerful me. And I just take a
Mm.
few minutes to really like call in my most powerful self and to really feel myself centered. And I usually can picture like a beautiful, like just flame around me that's giving me some space between what I'm feeling and sensing and thinking in the
Mm.
world,
Mhm.
and I'll just get quiet. And if there's like a question I'm pondering or something I'm wondering about, I'm just find that when I check in that kind of space, I get really different answers than if I'm like trying to strategically like sit down and go through pros and cons or like figure it out on the fly.
Yeah.
So I find that space. And some people, some people don't do well with like sitting in space. They do better with like walking. So that's
Yeah.
the other thing I like to do is, I'm blessed that I live in a rural area where I can walk out my door up into the mountains, but even if you can walk in a park or any like walk around your yard, some people find that by moving and just getting into a more like mindful walking state, that
Mm.
also can help them really open up to that kind of guidance.
Yeah, yeah, no, I must admit I find being out in nature is a really important part of my sort of daily routine. For those of you that are just joining us tonight, my guest is Meghan Gilroy, and we're talking about how to sync your soul in both your personal life and your business. So, if you are just coming onto the live stream tonight, do give us a shout out in the comments. Remember, there is an opportunity to ask Meghan your questions later, so drop them in the comments too, and I will share them with her. Just before we went live, Meghan and we had an opportunity just to have a little chat because we were super organized and had everything set up way in advance tonight. Wasn't the usual rush to get things done. And we were having a lovely conversation about well, just life right now and
Hmm.
generally how can I put this, surviving the world.
Hmm. It's
And
intense.
right. And one of the things that came up, and I think it's very relevant to what we're talking about tonight, is the idea of self-care, and self-care that goes beyond taking a nice bath or just switching off your phone for a couple of hours. And
Hmm.
I'd love to just tap into what self care means to you and how, again, incorporating self care into your life can help you to tap into your this intuition
Yeah.
and maybe start to get a little bit more connected with that soul part of you.
Yeah, I feel like self-care can often be talked about like it's a luxury, right? It's going to the spa or the massage or getting your nails done or whatever those things are that especially in non-COVID times were still a luxury, but it just feels
Mm,
more challenging to do some of those things right now. And what I'm finding is as the world gets louder and more chaotic, I actually need to get stiller and I need to take
mm,
even better care of myself. So I need to be like doubling down on my practices that keep me in a centered space, because then I'm more able to deal with the onslaught of the news or my children being off center or my husband, whatever's going on in his day. And so for me, I had to like deepen my self-care into not so much like, yeah, I could sit in the bathtub and read my book and that kind of like tunes me out for a few, minutes and I feel a little better. But like, what is it that I really energetically am asking for? And how can I, on that really deep soul level, give that to myself? And so those 10 minutes in the morning are like, they completely change the tone and course of my day. But even during the day, I'll do things like before I transition from my office space to my family,
mm,
I'll just like take a minute or two to listen to a song that's like so uplifting to me, or I'll just take a few deep breaths and call in a goddess energy, because there's so many like archetypal different energies that goddesses have, that is just like this great way for me to go, okay, I can embody this right now, and when I walk in the door, I'm ready for another couple hours of interacting with my family and taking care of my kids. And
mm,
so it kind of shifted for me in terms of really being in tune with what is my soul asking for. And I think
mm,
it's so easy for us just to push and override, right? Like when we're
mm,
tired, we just say like, "Oh, we still have so many things to do on our to-do list," instead of like, "No, lie down for 5 minutes on, my rug, and that's going to refill me energetically and enable me to
mm.
do all the things that need to be taken care of."
Mm, mm. Again, I have to come back to the idea that as women, we seem to have developed, especially in modern times, this idea that we have to be twice as much as anyone else.
Mhm.
We've got to do twice as much to validate
Mhm.
ourselves. We've got to be everything to everyone. And I'm
Yep.
sure people watching right now, if you've got family, husband, other people outside of yourself that are, I guess I want to say responsible for, maybe that's not quite the right terminology, but
Yep.
people in your life that you love and you care for,
Yep.
We have a real tendency to put ourselves at the end of the queue all the time,
Yep.
because there's some, kind of crazy belief that if we don't put ourselves last, we are somehow not looking after the people that we love and
Hmm.
adore.
Yeah, it's a little bit of madness. And, for me, what really
A
shifted.
lot of bit of madness.
Yeah, yeah, well, or a lot of that is what shifted for me is I have a 6-year-old daughter, Taya, and I realized my mom was a businesswoman and out there in the world and volunteering and taking care of my brother and I, and I'm like, wow, did I ever really see her like sit down or rest or take that time off? And I'm like,
Mm,
I can only model that to my daughter to say that I'm important and that what I want and need matters as part of this whole family unit. And I'm like, I don't want her to have that image of someone who's never able to exhale and relax and slow down
mm,
and just say, you know what, my value is not based on how much I get done. And
mm,
so when I made that shift, I realized that even things like saying my husband and I are going to have a date night, which consists of us coming out to my office space because there's nowhere to go right now. But like showing her like that's important in a relationship is like mom and dad time that's outside of
yeah.
kids. So it's just like for me, I just see like if my mommy well runs dry, like I'm no good to anybody. And
Mm,
I can actually tap into being more sourced. So I feel like I have like 10 times the energy when I'm tapping into whatever you believe in, if it's God or goddess or life or love or whatever. If you
mm,
tap into that energy, I'm actually like refilling myself at a rate that enables me then to be able to show up for other people in bigger ways and still have that time to take a deep breath. And I know a couple years ago when I was more in that more masculine, like I just have to get my goals done. I have so much to do.
mm,
I don't have an extra 5 minutes. And I was saying yes to a lot of things that I didn't really want to do, whether, the kids' school was asking for something and I felt like I should do it. And I really didn't want to in my heart. And when I started getting more in tune with myself and realizing I have to say no to the things that don't really resonate with me so that I do have that time and space to
mm,
check in with myself, take care of myself so that I can give back. And so I really see it as a cycle,
yeah.
and that's like it's feeding itself. And I think that's like a fundamental way we navigate our daily lives is we come from that more traditionally masculine point of view of just like
Mm,
we want our income to go like this, we want our personal growth to go like this, we just want to constantly be on that upward trajectory. And
yeah.
for me, I find I run more like on goddess energy, which is like a birthing, um like the moon, right? It comes into its fullness and then it wanes and something dies. And I have to keep refilling myself on these cycles and not just expecting myself to be constantly on the go because
Mm,
we're not in perpetual harvest, right? Like if you look
mm,
outside, we can't just constantly be harvesting our fields. We have to have
yeah.
fallow time. We have to have, full bloom time. And when I give myself permission to work in that way, I can show up so much more fully.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We've in my yoga classes, this particular block has been focused on the chakras and sort of energy around about that. But interestingly, last week with it being Halloween and obviously Samhain if you're pagan, um, I was really reminded of the idea that nature is telling you this is the time to slow down, to turn inwards, to
Mm-hmm.
shed the stuff that you're carrying, and you really need to put it down so
Yeah.
that you can sow some seeds in order to see them blossom
Hmm.
when we come into spring. And everything in nature is giving you the signals, the darker
Yeah.
days, just all of the changes that are taking place right now. And yet we still insist
Yeah.
on living our life at exactly the same pace, getting up
Hmm.
at the same time in the morning, going to
Yep.
bed at the same time at night, doing all the stuff that we've always done, instead of respecting the fact that actually right now you probably are going to feel a bit tired. In fact, I'm just looking at a comment again at Sally. At Sally, I'm loving your comments tonight. Thank you so much. She just said, "I'm so tired at the moment."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? It's the time to be that way. So, right, that's like what I'm kind of talking about in terms of syncing up with your soul. Like your soul is tied into the natural rhythms of our planet. And so to take those clues of, great, like, can you give yourself a break and go to bed a little earlier, sleep in that extra couple minutes, that helps replenish yourself and just give yourself that quiet time. And I know, I mean, just to give a super practical example, I know in the past, like, we would, I would get kind of nuts about Christmas, right? Like there would be social things to do and cookies to
Mm,
bake and presents to wrap, and at a certain point, I'm like, this is crazy. I'm literally just completely stressed out in December. That's there's such a contrast to December being, the darkest time of the year and the time to go inward. And so it was like over a course of the years with my family saying, like, how can we do this in a more meaningful way? How can we
mm,
do more activities that are really in alignment with like what we value as a family, as opposed to like saying yes to social engagements that don't matter, or to spending so much money on presents and consumerism and wrapping paper, and
uh-huh.
giving gifts that we make by hand and that we're spending time together to make. So it's like little tweaks like that can make such a huge
Nice.
difference, where you're just saying to yourself, like, what are those things that I'm not questioning in my life, or they just don't
Mm,
feel right to me in my life? And my husband was like so great about this, because it wasn't like we went from like doing a million presents to cold turkey the next year. It was just like every year pulling it back a little, and every year adding something that was a little more meaningful. And so now
mm,
I'm like, oh, we light our candles, during the Advent time, and the kids love that. And we read stories at night instead of like everyone being on their devices, or everyone like running around and socializing with friends. And I'm like, just those little things can make such a huge difference in how we're feeling and how
yeah.
we're just honoring those cycles that we're all going through.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's so true. You talked earlier about you were talking about goddess, and you actually just brought something else into my mind. And I again, I feel that this might be a fairly valid, kind of experience that a lot of people are having when
Hmm.
we're talking about syncing up with your soul. You said earlier about feeling like you're fulfilling your purpose. You find joy in everything from washing the dishes to doing your tax return.
Yep.
And
Okay, that's
last
stretching it.
all right, maybe not joy.
I'm like,
Yeah,
my
no, you
parents
know
were
where I'm going.
accountants, so I don't know about the tax return part, but I get what you're saying.
But again, this actually came out of the Halloween last week. It
Uh-huh.
was quite it was a bit of an aha day for me last week. I had just uh, recorded a class for Halloween, and I focused it on the dark side of yoga.
Uh-huh.
And it brought to mind for me the Hindu goddess Kali. I'm not a religious person, but I'm very fascinated by the lore and the stories that come out of various religions like Hinduism and
Yeah.
Buddhism. And I just love the way that these kind of ideas can really come to life.
Hmm.
And Kali for me is one of those deities, if you will, that really embodies what I feel so often I know I lack at times.
Hmm.
And when it comes to my purpose and what I'm doing, I very, very easily get into the cycle in my head. What I'm doing is not good enough. I don't have,
Hmm.
the yoga videos I'm making, they're not as good as everyone else's.
Right.
The clients that I've got, well, they don't really like coming to my
Right.
classes,
Or you should be like 5 steps further ahead than you actually
Right,
are,
exactly.
right?
Oh, I'm so behind the whole world.
Hmm.
There's, there's a constant battle. I've actually I wrote about this last week. I've made no secret of the fact that I've struggled with depression for pretty much most of my life. I didn't know what it was for a long time. Then when I did recognize it, it's a constant battle for me
Yeah.
with that voices in my head, and it's not the good kind.
Right.
And Kali comes up for me often because like I just freaking love her.
Yeah. She's
She's just this
badass.
embodied like bad ass.
Yeah.
She's there with her red eyes and her fang like teeth and
Hmm.
like black skin hanging from her bones. She's got
Hmm.
her necklace of skulls and she wears a skirt of arms. I mean, what's not to love, right?
Right.
She is not waiting for permission to
Right.
do anything. She doesn't care if anyone likes her. She's
Yeah.
not there to be liked. She is there for a purpose. And there's something about her that when I'm kind of sinking into that,
Yeah.
that drift that sometimes comes up, just to kind of bring her to mind, she really makes me kind of step out of that and say, you know what, I am doing what I should be doing, and I do love what I do. And all right, you know what,
Yep.
maybe there's not a million people that get it, but there's enough. And I think we could all do with a little more empowerment, and to maybe break out of this cycle, because we're talking about cycles here as well. Break out of this cycle of, as women, apologizing for
Hmm.
like having a dream, apologizing for, oh, I'm not good enough, or I'm not
Yep.
in the right place, or I'm not doing whatever. That to me, when you talk about syncing up your soul, that's one of the things that could come out of that. I think that's one of the,
Absolutely.
definitely one of the kind of products of getting more in tune with yourself.
Absolutely. And I just love, like, when you were talking, you actually started embodying that energy and you had like a different quality to you. And yes,
I
I love
I
that
am a
because like
fan.
she's like a archetype, right? And so if you
Yeah.
need that energy, you can just like call on that and it's almost like this instant template that gets downloaded. And for me, I have a new moon lodge, a moon circle, that a woman's circle, and we usually pull goddess cards that really inform us of like what energy would be most supportive for the month. And because the deck we use has such a range of goddesses, it's like, to me, I'm like, okay, and there's other times when you need like super gentle like Hestia energy, and she's like the hearth and home tender. And
Right.
sometimes when I've been more in that like, rah, I'm going to conquer the world, it's like, well, wait a minute, what about, nurturing your little ones at home? And so I
Yeah.
love what you're saying. Like, yes, when you can call in universal energies that are informative and supportive, it does help you really get past those places where we all start playing small, or we all start doubting ourselves, or we all start just operating in ways that are not really serving like your
Yeah.
light and your gift to the world, which is to share these kind of teachings and share this kind of message. So yeah, bravo to you.
Me and Callie, we've
Yeah,
got
you're
this. We've got
buds,
this.
BFFs. That's awesome.
So we're talking about syncing up your soul, and I think you've certainly given us a number of ways that we can do that, like being still and making that time for yourself, bringing self care to the forefront of your activities throughout the day.
Yep.
But let's put that into perspective in the time of, I hate to say it, COVID, when we're, I guess some people, and I'm sure you can relate to this, and if you can relate to it, again, give me a shout out in the comments. Let me know that you're hearing this. But when we're all at a point where perhaps we don't even know how we're gonna feed our families,
Yep.
or are we gonna have a job next week, or a roof over our head,
Yep.
how do you prioritize this stuff, and how do you stay focused on your purpose and your
Hmm.
plan and everything that we've talked about, when there is so much external stuff
Yep.
being fired out? It's like a barrage, right?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, what I see is every time I've listened to my intuition or my soul, it's like it has access to things that like my mind doesn't understand or know, right? Like
Yeah.
there's mysterious, magical, synchronistic things that start happening, whether it's like that nudge to pick up the phone and call someone, or
Mm.
just getting that idea that feels like so sparkly and exciting for like a different yoga class. And so to me, when you're listening on that level, your mind can only really come up with solutions that you've heard of before, right? Like your mind is very good at saying, well, if this happens, here's the next thing that's going to happen. Or it wants to pull from the past and say, oh, don't do that because when you tried that last time, here's what happened. But when you're able to stay more in the moment and say, yes, like this universe is here to support me and be abundant. And I may be struggling financially, but can I look at outside my window and see like an abundance of nature? I can look around my room and see an abundance of color. And when you start thinking in those like more creative ways, that's to me when you find the solutions that were unexpected. And I just look at my, community here in my tiny little mountain town, and so many women this year have gone through like divorce and moving and losing jobs. And it's like the more that they just like trusted and surrendered and listened to those like little nudges, their lives are reconfiguring themselves in such unexpected ways. And they're feeling that sense of like such bigger love and gratitude. And that to me is when that the surprising solution is going to come through. But if you go into that place of constriction and doubt, it's just like you just create more of that and you kind of get into that downward cycle instead of saying, okay, yes, everything feels dark and scary, and like what's true right now? What's that one action I can take today that's going to keep me in a positive space and going to keep me moving forward?
Yeah. Do you feel that gratitude plays a really big part in this?
You know what's funny? I mean, I love gratitude, and at the same time, I have some people, like one of my dear friends, like that's her thing. She is all about gratitude all the time. And I have to say, like, I am grateful. We say a gratitude prayer before dinner, and I'm so grateful for everything in my life. But that I can't say that's like a huge practice for me.
Hmm. Is it more meditation that you would lean into, or?
I feel like, yeah, that's a good question. Let me see how I would answer that. I feel like I'm more about listening to like what's true in the moment. So there are times when like, yeah, it may be the best thing I could do is to be grateful. And other times the best thing I could do would be like totally pissed off. Like, what the heck is going on? And like let myself feel that anger and sadness and rage. And, the next moment might be, you know what, you just need a day of rest. You need to give yourself a break. You need to give yourself permission to spread out on the floor and pull out your journals and not be like so structured. And the next day it's something else. So I guess for me, it's not about like any one practice or one energy, but it's more of how can I constantly check in? And because I'm constantly changing and shifting every day. And I mean, just think about our monthly cycles. Like sometimes of the month, I'm more on fire and I'm more excited and I have more energy. And other times like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to be inward and quiet and contemplative. And I
Mm,
just find the more I can attune to that. So, even on a day, if I'm feeling very quiet and inward and I have an interview to do, I might just bring a quieter, gentler energy. And on a day when I'm feeling that like really bright, shining light, and I'm, doing an interview, I might have more upward energy. And I just find like when I'm in sync with those kind of energetic nudges and those messages, everything just feels like it's flowing more because I'm not constantly like judging myself that I should be some other way or I should be practicing gratitude or it lets go a lot of those shoulds and it just becomes like
mm,
here's what is like here's how I am today. I'm doing my best. I'm going to get done the things I need to do, and on days when I need to be gentle, I'm gentler, and on days when I need to like amp it up a little more, then I draw on like deeper resources to do that.
mm, Yeah, no, I hear that. It's interesting, your take on that. I love it. I see in the sort of wellness and I guess some, maybe you call it the spiritual world, people can get really blinkered in their thing, right?
Mhm.
And if you're not practicing gratitude, oh, your life is never gonna
Right.
come together. If you're not practicing meditation, oh, you're never
Yeah.
gonna find inner peace. And
Yeah.
well, I don't agree with that
Mhm.
personally. For myself, I mean, so far tonight, we've talked about souls, we've talked about Hindu goddesses, we've
Yeah.
talked about, there's a number of things. If anybody who's watching this, go back to the replay and just look at the things
Right.
that we've talked about over the course of tonight. And rightly so. I think that at certain times there are certain things that really speak to you, and
Mhm.
other times they just don't feel right. And trying to squeeze yourself into a little box because you
Yeah.
think you're supposed to do it is
Yeah.
not going to benefit you in
Mhm.
any way. But how do we know what the right thing is to do?
Well, that's where you develop that trust, right? Where you're listening to yourself and getting those messages. And I have been on such a kick lately about burning the box. So I love that you brought that up because I've
Oh,
literally done fire ceremonies where I've like taken whatever my ideas are of like what does it mean to be spiritual or what does it mean to be a business coach or what does it mean to be a mom or what does it mean to be like a nice woman and just put put it in the box and literally gone out to my fire circle and burned that because I think that's where we find our freedom, right? Is we have so many messages coming to us from parents, society, partners, children, whatever, of like how we should be. And then there's how we are inside and what's true today. And it's shifting and changing all the time. And when we just give ourselves the freedom to say, I don't have to be the way even I think I should be, right? I don't have to believe myself when I say you're no good. I don't have to believe myself when I think I'm so great either. So if I can just be in that place of like, I'm burning it down so that what's true for me today, what's supportive of me today, I can show up fresh every day. I find like I get a lot more juice and flow from that than trying to like force myself to do any practice, any belief, any system that other people outside of me. So I love hearing lots of different inspiring ideas and like picking and choosing what works, but no one else on this planet is configured the way I am or the way you are. And I think when we start listening to experts that say like my system works for everyone,
Mm,
I just find that's like not true. That,
mm,
unless you match, are they an overachiever? Are they a Pisces? Are they, on the Enneagram, what their number is? That it works for people who tend to have similar kind of energetic configurations as they do.
mm,
And
mm,
so it keeps coming back to, what's true for me? How can I nurture myself? How can I listen to what's true for me? And that takes a lot of courage because you're constantly hearing messages outside of ourselves that, we should be a different way. It's not okay to be that
mm,
way.
mm.
Why aren't you this way? And yeah, like to me, I love burning all that down.
You just actually said two things that just put such a smile on my face there. The first one is, and I say this to anybody who's watching, if you remember nothing else from tonight's recording, burn the box. That is going to be my new phrase
Yeah. Burn the
for the
box.
rest of the week. I love it. Burn the box, people. And the second thing is the fact that you just dropped casually into the conversation that you've got a fire circle outside your house, and I
I
think we should
do.
all have a fire circle
Oh my
outside
gosh,
our
we'd be in such a
houses.
better
I'm
place.
so jealous.
Yeah, I have a fire circle that we do sacred ceremony around, and it's funny because this summer in Colorado we had a fire ban on, and it was like killing me not to be able to use it, and now that's been
Oh,
lifted, and there's just something about like sitting around a fire and being able to offer it whatever is no longer serving you, and I think that's like one of the sacred uses of fire. And if you don't have a fire circle,
absolutely.
I've also done ceremony where I've brought, my little soup pot and like burn
Yeah.
something at the bottom of it. That works too. Or if you have a fireplace or even just energetically with a candle. And also that fire builds energy, right? Like we can reignite that fire. And so a lot of times I'll use fire in that way just to like imagine inhaling that energy and refilling my spirit and soul and
Yeah.
mojo and just
Yeah.
calling in like what is it that I really have that passion for and that I want to bring out there in the world. So yeah,
I,
good
I
stuff.
love I love how our conversations go. There's so many things that are just coming into my head just now. I actually had a little informal fire ceremony yesterday in my back garden with a giant metal bin,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and it
Like a
it was
garbage a
there was
garbage bin?
there was a garbage bin,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
There was nothing like, sexy or spiritual about this in any way, shape, or form, but my god, was it cleansing. I had found old paperwork in my garage a few days ago, something that I thought had gone from a long time ago, and it dates back to a part of my life that was pretty tough. It was when I had been very ill and I lost my businesses. I had to bankrupt myself. It was a whole
Yep.
thing. And there was like a box of papers that I thought had gone to the shredder 4 or 5 years ago, and they
Yeah.
were just there in the garage. And I found them, I looked at them, and I said, you know what, you guys, you've got to go. So I got the trash can.
I love it.
And I set light to those things. I have the paper cuts and the scars to prove it as well. My hands
Yeah.
got absolutely shredded doing this,
Yeah.
but it was the most
I
cathartic
bet.
experience, just standing in the cold in my garden, just
Mm.
watching the smoke rise up.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. And I do think, I'm slightly worried by the fact that there are some people saying I love fire in the comments now. I
Okay,
feel like
so
there
my
should be some kind of
husband is a
disclaimer.
firefighter, so like we do this safely. Like he's always on the okay, where's the water hose and yeah, so let's do this safely. But no, it is because you're really like releasing that energy and I believe it like scientifically, energy can only be converted, right? You can't lose it, you can't gain it.
Right.
So if you're
Mm.
taking something we like store energy in papers, we store energy in beliefs, we store energy in old objects. And if you're taking that and saying, I'm releasing that energy, then you can also recycle that and harness it. And now you have that energy available to you to create in some new way. So that's just brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I had a good time, I have to confess.
That's awesome.
It was fun. Sally's saying every full moon she has a little burn, and I agree. I quite often do a full moon ritual where I set light to the old ideas or just things that you need to just shed and let go of. Um, all right. Does anybody have any questions for Megan at this point? Does anybody? I really want to say, does anybody have any burning questions for Megan
That's funny.
that they
You
want to
know what?
ask? I know.
We should talk about too, because I
Tell
realized
me.
I had told some of my tribe that we were going to talk about illness and sickness and like coming through that. And
Sure.
when you mentioned your experience, that kind of popped up for me. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Go. No. Go
yeah.
ahead, please.
So the reason why I
If
was thinking
anybody
about that.
throws up a question, I'll pass it on.
Okay, perfect. While people are typing. So, yeah, what sparked that for me is just that I do feel like as we're talking about these cycles, is I know coming like out of summertime, I ended up getting shingles, and that can be like
Mm,
super uncomfortable. It wasn't painful for me, but it was super itchy and uncomfortable. And it kind of pointed out that there were some other things going on in my system. And I think it was you or someone else said to me like, "Oh, that must have been horrible." And my
mm,
response was like, "Actually, it was like such a great
yeah.
gift to me because it caused me to go on this deeper dive of looking at like where are the places in my life had I not processed some grief, where are the places that I was still really using that kind of pushing energy and not being in a place of allowing and being more conscious
Mm,
about actions. And it just really helped me heal some, family relationships that I had. And it caused me to really go deeper on that self-care journey. And so that to me is also a key with kind of syncing up with your soul is
mm,
instead of looking at those things in your life that, you could say that was a negative experience or like, oh God, you got sick or oh God, you lost your job. I remember I had a mentor once and my husband said to them, I lost my job. And they said, congratulations. And, you just want to like sock them in the face. But at
yeah.
the same time, it's like, okay, how are these things coming from the external world or how are these things coming up from deep inside of us, giving us that chance to look at our lives and say, like, what's not working for me? What do I really need to shed and let go of? What's ready to die within me? What's ready to be burned within me? So that that new life can come forward and that deeper truth. And I just find in my life, the more times I've listened to doing that deep healing work or making the crazy leap of faith to move across country or shut down a business or open a business,
Mm,
that's the time I feel most alive and that's the time I feel that confidence and that being on purpose because even if it might not make any logical sense or even though the world around me may say this looks insane and crazy, it's when I'm listening to that inner voice that's going, no, like this is really true. This is where you should be and what you should be doing. And that not only makes me feel more connected to myself, but I just see that's like where the abundance has come from in my life. And that's where the connections to people who mean a lot to me and the synchronicity happen.
mm, mm. Where do you think our fear of letting go, or perhaps it's our love of attachment comes from? I'm not sure which way around it is. What drives that, do you think?
I feel like it comes from just that fear of the unknown, right? So,
Mm,
our minds like to be comfortable, they like to be habitual, they like to know what's coming next. And we
mm,
kind of create this like beautiful illusion that, we know what tomorrow is going to look like if we have the house and we have the job and we have the car and the kids or whatever that life looks like for you. And really
mm,
that's just an illusion because we have no idea, good or bad what might be coming down the road towards us. So, I
mm,
think when we like start embracing that unknown and embracing that we're always going to be changing, and life is always going to be changing, and we're not so attached to it has to look a certain way, it should be this way. If it's not going exactly according to my plan, that means something is wrong. That's when we can start breathing a little more freely and realizing, like, okay, we're going to get through this. We're going to be taken care of. It may not be the outcome we thought or hoped for, but maybe there's something deeper or richer there for us as well.
Mm, mm. There is a massive amount of programming, I think, that all of us are carrying, especially from our sort of formative years. We do kind of form these beliefs and values when we're very young, and there are very sort of set preconceptions about what we should be doing, particularly at certain times. Now, I know we've talked about this in some of our other women talking wellness talks. It's actually come up quite a few times.
Uh-huh.
Example would be me. I am going to be 47 years old in 3 weeks' time.
Nice.
And at the grand old age of 47, I live with my mum. I'm single. I don't own a home. I don't have a husband, boyfriend,
Yep.
etc. There's a big long list of things that in those kind of set ideas
Mhm.
I don't fit into the plan. And
Right.
again, I think a lot of people probably feel that if they're in a relationship, maybe they're looking at it and saying, "Oh, but I'm not married yet," or I'm married but I don't have children.
Hmm.
I'm in this situation but I don't have this, or
Yep.
I'm at this particular age. Why don't I have more money in the bank, or
Right.
whatever? And we get really bogged down
Yeah.
in, I think, other people's ideas of what life should look like, when what we should
Absolutely.
be doing is saying, well, I actually quite like where I live. I like
Hmm.
that I if I want to go and work on a tiny island in the Indian Ocean at the beginning of January, I can do it, and I don't have to
Yeah.
ask somebody's permission, or like have a conversation with anyone about whether I should or
Right.
shouldn't. But there are massive
Agree.
influences, societal influences, that are really difficult to kind of block out, I think.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think so much of our inner work and spiritual work has to do with looking at those beliefs and agreements that we made as a child about what life should be like, how we should be, is it okay to be seen? Is it okay to be heard? Is it okay to speak up? Is it okay
Mm.
to not do something perfectly, right? We have all these kind of
Yeah.
scripts running like unconsciously oftentimes, and it often takes something in life shaking us up, like COVID, or like, you know, the American presidency, or sickness, or a business burning to the ground, that makes you say, like, oh, is this really what I wanted? And how can I do a course correction that might create a deeper, richer life? And for me, I just
Mm.
see, like, if everything that I had set my mind to and my life had come to be, I'm like, wow, what a boring life I would have had. And it's been the twists and turns, and marrying my husband 2 weeks after our first date, or picking up and moving across country based on an astrology reading, or all these things that have, like, just felt like yes, a big yes to my soul, that have brought the, like, oh, I actually got what I wanted in ways I would have never been able to predict.
Mm, yeah,
Right.
isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Rachel's just shared, she walked away from her job, which she hated. It was very scary, but the best thing that she could have done. I'm retired now. I am living life, really living and loving life. Isn't that a great sentence?
Wow.
Really living and loving
Yeah.
life.
Congratulations.
And Sally said, I was getting married on the 14th of November, but it's been cancelled due to COVID. But I've managed to book a different day, and this day feels amazing. So
Yeah.
yeah, people get
Yeah. The
it.
unexpected surprises, right?
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
life often delivers us, like, so much more, because again, our mind can only conceive from, like, its bank of information, of from the experiences we've had, the education, the training, the society. And when we open up to, like, the power of our heart or the power of our soul, to me, that's where that infinite possibility and, like, creative solutions and just
Mm.
magical experiences happen. And if we just keep listening to those nudges and shouts and whispers of what feels right to us, what's that yes, what brings you the pleasure, what
Mm.
brings you that joy. And if I'm like, wow, if we could, the other day, one of my clients said, like, joy is the new spirituality. Like, do we have to be so serious and like sit there and or say our prayers or,
Yes.
do like the serious, like we need to be serious about this. Like, could it include laughter and music and joy and, dancing around by the fire? Like, to me, that's
Mhm.
what excites me is when we start like tapping into, this feels right to me. This doesn't make sense in my mind, but it feels right in my
Mhm.
body. And that's, to me, when the sparks happen and when you really feel like you're on fire and you're on point.
Yeah, well, I know there's a couple of people watching today that do yoga classes with me, and they will know that they're not the most serious yoga classes you could ever attend.
Right.
There's always something that sparks something in my mind that makes me have a little giggle. Or last night I was training a yoga wheel class in balance, and my own balance could not have been worse. I laughed all the way through this class because I find myself thinking, yeah, I'm supposed to be teaching these people how to balance on a yoga wheel, and I was all over the place. But
Yeah.
what was really interesting with that was I teach live classes, but I record them so that I can upload them into the
Hmm.
yoga membership. And obviously, I do a little bit of editing on the classes that are uploaded. So just to take out the beginning chit chat, so that anybody
Yeah.
who's watching, you're not getting taken up, with all the
Yeah.
banter at the beginning. And as I was going through the class this morning, I looked at, there was one part in particular where I went to do a balance, and I didn't quite fall on my ass, but I was like this close to it. And had to just kind of recenter myself. And there was this tiny little voice in my head that was going, "Oh, you could just edit that out. That's what editing's for." But there was a really loud voice in my head
Hmm.
that went, "Hell no, you need
Hmm.
to keep that in, because
Yep.
that is just like, that's real. That's what
That's
happens.
real. Yes.
Sometimes shit happens.
Yeah.
We're not all perfect, and we don't have to be perfect. And you know what?
Yeah.
Like, let's just leave it in." It was actually really funny. I kind of there was a little groovy dance as I,
Yeah. A
I,
little
I kind of
shimmy.
fell over. Like, it was full on. I should probably I could make a gif out of it.
Yeah, you can make a little clip. No, good for you because I feel like that to me is being a leader, right? Is like you're being an inspiration and an example to say, you know what, even though I teach this, it doesn't mean I don't have days when I'm off balance. And like, here's what I
Right.
do. I laugh at myself or I fall down and get back up or like there's such a great teaching in that. And
Mm.
I think that's what's going to make you unique and special because you're not putting on some mask of, like the perfect yogini, but you're saying like,
Oh,
yeah,
there's no
here's
mask.
who I am today, right?
Yeah, and I think we all could do with embracing that a little bit more. And I think Sally said that earlier in our talk. I forget the comment. I'll see if I can find it. No, I don't think I can find it actually. But she said something about, she's nervous about just not being perfect.
Yep.
And well, none of us are perfect. Some of us
Mm-mm.
just maybe have a better editor than others, but none of us are perfect. We all
Mm-mm.
wobble. We
Yep.
we've all got, everybody's got a belly when they bend over. It doesn't matter how skinny you are.
Right?
Let's just start to
That's
embrace
a
that.
box. Burn that perfect box
Right?
for sure, right?
Exactly. Oh my God, yes. And to me, that embodies everything that you've just talked about. The idea of syncing up with your soul and just being authentically who you are. I go back to Kali again, unapologetically
Yeah.
who you are. But the hardest part of being who you are is knowing who you are in the first place. I think,
Hmm.
it's great to be able to say, let's all just be who we are, but so many of us are struggling to even know who that is.
Yep.
Again, we're actually almost out of time, but just a quick example of that, for myself, that I think might just spark something else. This might run over a little bit more than an hour. But when I was 35, just after I'd lost the businesses, I split up from a long-term relationship. So I've been in this
Yep.
relationship since I was 16 years old. So pretty much my entire adult life, I'd been with the same person.
Right.
And I woke up one day 35 years old and kind of wondering, can I put a roof over my head? Can I make friends? Can I earn money on my own? Because I had never made an adult decision in my entire life to that point by myself. I'd always been,
Wow.
I'd gone from being with my family to being with my partner. And
Right.
all of a sudden I was kind of there going. And what was really incredible in that moment, I mean, it was all very horrible at the time, but incredible at the same time, was I started to realize a lot of things that I didn't really like because he liked them. I was 16
Uh-huh.
years old and I was like, oh yeah, I'll listen to that piece of music, I'll eat that
Right.
particular food, I'll watch
Yep.
that TV program. And at 35, 36 years old, I was suddenly going, I don't really want to eat meat. I don't really
Right.
want to listen to that kind of music.
Yeah.
I actually want to sit on a yoga mat and become a dive instructor and travel the world and not live anywhere longer than 6 months. Uh,
Yeah.
um, and suddenly I began to discover who I was
Right.
in in being on my own, but I didn't realize that I didn't know who I was. I thought, again, I fitted into a box of someone else's
Mm-hmm.
making, and it wasn't a bad thing. He didn't, he wasn't doing
Yeah,
it
he
out of
didn't
badness.
force you.
It was just how I
Yeah,
developed.
you woke up. You woke up.
I woke up and I was like, wow, I've spent so much of my life um being, oh, here's a good one. So much of my life being shushed by other
Uh,
people. Lorna, you're a bit loud. Can you just keep it
yeah.
down? Oh, Lorna, that story was a bit inappropriate. Maybe you shouldn't have told that. And I would be like, well, sorry, you know what?
Yeah.
I then surrounded myself with people who actually laughed louder than I did, if that
Right.
was even
Right.
possible, who told more inappropriate stories than I did.
Right.
And I got rid of all these people that were shushing me and everything else. But
Yeah.
it took pretty much like losing everything to be able to discover all of that stuff.
It's so true. And it's a process. Like I love your story because it illustrates like everything we've been talking about, which is right? Like you went through a cycle, something burned, it
Yes.
died, a business and a relationship, and that enabled something new to grow out of that. And it was listening to those little things. I like this, I don't like this. This feels right, that doesn't feel right. And that's how you get to know yourself and get to be in sync with your soul. And just the more you do that, to me, now you're this like beautiful, vibrant expression of yourself. And it's not something that happens overnight, right? We don't usually get the magic wand to say like, okay, the way I'm thinking or feeling is going to change. But if we take those steps of tuning into what we want and need and what we feel, then we can create like the most amazing lives for ourselves.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I just want to read you a couple more comments before we
Okay.
finish up. So, Rachel said, "Well, look at you now." That one was for me. Thanks very
Yeah,
much. Um, Sal has said she loves Michael Bolton and she's got VIP tickets for next year. She's so excited. Just had to tell you all, I've listened to him for 35 years. Love it.
that's awesome.
Good for you. Know your mind, Sally Rutledge. Um, Rachel said, "Oh, actually, these comments are all for me. I'm really sorry. No, love your laugh, Lorna. Thanks very much." Uh, Sally said, I always get told to be quiet. Well, I hope, Sally, that if you have learned nothing else from tonight's talk, that you are going to no longer silence yourself and you're going to be
That's
as
right.
loud
Be
as feels good to you.
loud and
Um,
proud.
and yeah, that Rachel's just said, don't listen, to the not just be yourself, but you need to know who you are in order to, to be yourself. And maybe that's the journey, maybe that's the discovery that that you're all ready to make. Megan, I don't know about you, but I find it's the same every time I do one of these chats, that I get to the end of it and I'm like, oh, that can't be an hour, that can't
I know
be
that went by like that so
time
fast.
up, what the hell. I don't know about the rest of you watching. Are you feeling inspired, motivated, maybe you're just feeling relieved to know that you're not alone right now, and it is okay to be loud and to be whoever the heck you want to be.
Yeah.
I want to say a massive, no, excuse me, a massive thank you to Meghan for just giving us her time today, for sharing a tiny drop of her vast wisdom and knowledge. It has been an absolute joy. I've truly, truly
Thank
loved this conversation today. Now, if you do want to hear more from Meghan, or if you want to connect with her, there will be details of her website as well as how to connect with her on social media in the description for this chat. Now, next week, my guest is actually coming to us all the way from Adelaide, Australia. So, Women Talking Wellness is not going to be at the usual time, for the simple reason that that would mean my poor guest is going to have to be awake at 4:30 in the morning. Now, she loves us, she loves me, but she doesn't love us that much. So I need you just to stay tuned for more details on the Facebook page. And remember, if you can't join us live, you will be able to tune in on the replay here on Facebook or over on YouTube. And you'll also be able to find all the previous Women Talking Wellness chats over on YouTube as well. It beats a Netflix binge any day, I am telling you. Now, my friends, we have been on a journey together again this evening, one that I am so grateful for on every level. And it just wouldn't be any fun if it wasn't for you. So thank you for showing up, for sharing your comments, and you know what, just for being authentically you.
Mhm.
Meghan, thank you once again for everything that you shared. And guys,
Thank
enjoy the
you.
rest of your evening, and I will see you next week for another Women Talking Wellness.